All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Voting 101 Q&A with Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon. I will be your interviewer today. My name is Cearah Hamiliton. I am the Community Engagement Manager here at Alliance for a Better Minnesota. And so thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be fabulous. I've been looking forward to this for weeks now. And so thank you so much for being here, everyone. And thank you to Secretary Steve Simon. He has swamped you all, but you know what? It's a good swamp. He is busy, but he's working on behalf of all of us and making sure that everything is smooth sailing as it can possibly be this season for all of us as we are letting our voices be heard. So let's welcome to the string, Secretary of State, Steve Simon. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks to ABM. You're doing great work. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm never too busy. You guys are great, and we got to get the word out about what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much once again. We are going to go ahead and dive into, we have a ton of questions here. And you know what, everyone, as you are listening to this conversation, we want this to be as informative as possible. Okay. This is for you. This is for a community. So we want to make sure that you have the accessibility to go ahead and leave a comment in the comment box. Any questions that you may have that's specific to the voting process here in Minnesota, leave those comments and we will make sure that we get to those during our hour here of our great conversation we're gonna have. So we're not gonna delay this time anymore. We're gonna go ahead and jump into to these questions. Are you ready, Secretary?
I am ready.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, before we get into that, I wanted to play a quick game. I said I was going to do this at the end, okay, but I'm going to do this at the beginning just to kind of get things warmed up a little bit. Okay. So I do this game called This or That as we're getting to know you a little bit more. We know what you do, and we'll talk about that a bit more too. But let's get to know Secretary Steve Simon as a person. All right, so I have about 10 questions, and you have roughly 2 seconds to answer the question. Okay. So I'll give you 2 options, and you can answer which one you would prefer in 2 seconds. Okay.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Here we go. Question 1: dog or cat?
Dog.
Netflix or YouTube?
YouTube.
Phone call or text?
Phone call.
Facebook or Twitter?
Twitter.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Football or basketball?
Football.
Amusement park or day on the beach?
Oof. I'll go beach.
Okay. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Okay. Classical art or modern art?
Modern.
Book or ebook?
Book.
Boom. All right. So that was pretty quick there. You did.
Do I win? What did I win? Anything?
You win everyone going out to vote. Okay. That's what you win. All right, you all. So make sure that you make sure that you give the Secretary of State his prize by going out to vote. All right, and we'll get into different options and all that good stuff as we get into this conversation. Thank you for indulging me in that game.
That's a good icebreaker.
All right, awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into these questions. So, all right, here we go. First question that we have for you. What are the responsibilities of the Secretary of State? What are you responsible for directly?
Right. Yeah, we wear a lot of hats in the office. The biggest portion of the office, just by head count, is not what you would think. It's the business services part of the office. So when you start a business in Minnesota, you got to file the actual entity. What are you calling yourself? ABC Inc., XYZ Company. You file with our office. We do a lot of commercial and business related work and filings. Help the wheels of commerce go round. So very important. Second major thing that we do is we run a program called the Safe at Home program. Safe at Home is an address confidentiality or address anonymity program for victims of domestic violence, stalking, or those who otherwise fear for their physical safety or the safety of their children. Yeah. And so we protect people. We get them their mail. We help them get their lives back on track. And what it means is only the person in the program and whoever else they choose to tell and us know where they physically live. Mm-hmm. No one else does. But the third area, and the one that I think we're here to talk about, and the one that most people know about and care about, particularly this time of year, is the elections function. We're the chief elections administrator for Minnesota. We don't count votes. We don't hire poll workers. We don't own elections equipment. We don't do that. That happens at the local level. But we do the broader stuff. We coordinate those activities. We do all the legislative and policy work. We obviously report the results on election night. We certify the results and a lot more. So that's what we do. I like to say I'm in the democracy business, and it really is an amazing time to be in the democracy business.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's a little bit about what the Secretary of State's office does. If you were wondering and just kind of confused, like, do they just do all election stuff, or, what else do they do? Well, there you have it. So they do a lot of things, and we're so thankful for the great work that you all do in your office. Okay, so what are some of the different options that people have this voting season when it comes to casting their ballot? What are the different options that we have?
All right, let me first say, I'm so happy you phrased it the way you did. Voting season, not voting day. One way to think about election day these days is election day isn't the day we vote, it's the last day that we vote.
Yes.
So there are three options to vote, okay? There's the classical go in on election day and vote in person at a polling place. That's number one. Number two is go in person 46 days before the election, or up to 46 days, like now, we're right in it right now, and vote in person absentee. And you can go, there's usually one place per community, per city, sometimes one or a few per county, and you can go in person and vote like tomorrow if you wanted to. And then the third option is to vote from home. Also absentee, but it means going to a website, mnvotes.org. That's mnvotes.org. That's our website. It takes you 5 minutes maximum. You order that ballot, it comes to you. Super popular this year.
Awesome. So those are your options, everyone. Okay. So feel free to, whichever one works the best for you. We urge you to go ahead and move forward and get that process going. All right. For those Minnesotans who aren't tech savvy, what is the process when applying for an absentee ballot?
So I mentioned the, tech savvy option if you have internet access and if you are comfortable with it, to go to mnvotes.org. But you can always do it the paper way, the more typical or traditional way. And you can get that paper form to do the same thing, either by downloading it, or if you're not a downloader, you can have someone you know or trust download the form and print the form, or you can obtain it in person at a city hall or a county office, or most public buildings will have that form available.
So as you just mentioned, so you can hand off your ballot to someone else if it's sealed in the envelope, hand it off to someone and they can bring it into the polling location, correct?
Oh, the actual ballot, you mean, not the application? Yeah, the actual ballot, yeah. You absolutely can either hand deliver it yourself, or you can hand it to someone you trust to hand deliver it. There's some exceptions to that. There's a limit of 3, so no one person can deliver more than 3. But if they haven't reached their limit yet, it can be someone you live with, someone you know, a neighbor, a friend, a relative. You can say, hey, can you deliver this for me to the elections office in my city, in my county? That information will be in the materials that you receive if you voted by absentee.
Awesome. So remember that, everyone. You can help out a neighbor or two. You can bring in, as Secretary of State just stated, 3 max per person. So that is not illegal. You can do that. Yep. So if you have a grandparent or someone that wants to hand that off to you, you most certainly can be helpful and do that. So thank you for clarifying that. I didn't know that there was a 3-person or 3 ballot max. So that's good to know.
Yep.
Great to know. Let's see here. We have another question. Okay, let's go here. This is a good one. What are some myths about voting by mail that you would like to clear up?
Oh, I've got several. There's a certain someone with a prominent political office who has unfortunately been spreading some misinformation about voting by mail. So, look, it is safe. It is secure. It is time tested in Minnesota, okay? It really is. We've been doing this for decades and decades and generations. We've been doing this since before World War II. This is nothing new or radical or unique to 2020 or COVID. All it is, voting by mail, is ordering the ballot to come to you at mnvotes.org or on the paper form. It comes to you. You can vote with your feet up. You can vote while you're eating breakfast or folding laundry or whatever it is you want to do. And then you get it back. And we'll get into some of those details later. But look, I really do honestly want to emphasize it is really, really secure. We have triple layers of security. We have personal identifying information that every applicant must supply, and the ballot has to be returned with that same information. We have a unique barcode assigned to every single ballot, and we have a signature requirement where the voter is asked to sign the outside of one of the security envelopes so that if there's a specimen on file, in a pinch, that can be used as a secondary or backup form of making sure that that ballot belongs to and was cast by the person that was the intended voter. Through and through, up and down, and over the years, we've had good fortune with security and minimal, if not zero, problems when it comes to intercepting ballots or someone who's not supposed to vote voting that ballot. So you should feel absolutely comfortable voting that way, and more Minnesotans are. Over 1 million so far.
Awesome. So you're stating that there have been, already I believe I read an article that stated that there have been over 1 million ballots that's already been, ballots that have already been sent in to your office, correct?
Well, it's actually 1 million ballots have been ordered. So million Minnesotans have already ordered the absentee ballot to come to them. And just to put that number in perspective, like how big a number that is, in the last election, we're still, as of tonight, we're still 34 days out. That number is going to grow. As of the entire election last time, there were only 200 some thousand that voted at home. We're already at 1 million, and we're expecting about 3 million voters. So we're talking about a third, could be as high as 40% of people who are not voting in the polling place. They're either voting by mail, they're voting in-person absentee. So it's a big number.
Wow. Great job, Minnesota. Great job getting on top of it and getting your applications in so that you can get your ballots in enough time. So speaking to getting in your ballots in enough time, what are we, what's kind of the timeline with that? When are we telling folks to try to get their ballots in? How are we suggesting people to get their ballots in? What date?
Yeah, so this is super key and super crucial. And if nobody remembers anything else I said tonight, please just remember this one thing. Truly, the only thing, if you remember nothing else, it's this. We got a change in the law for this year and this year only. It's a one-time 2020 special, very on brand for this really unconventional and challenging year. So the old rule in a normal year, and this is not a normal year, the old rule was you had to get that ballot back by election day. It's not the rule this year. This year, by court order, in an order that now everyone's agreeing with, it has not been appealed, so all parties are on board this year and this year only, the rule is more generous. The rule is you can postmark it as late as election day, Tuesday, November 3rd, as long as it gets there 1 week later on Tuesday, November 10th. If it arrives on Wednesday, November 11th, it's no good. It's spoiled. It will not be counted. But you've got a 1 week cushion. Every person in Minnesota now has a 1 week automatic cushion to get that thing from point A to point B. That's pretty good. Now, you may not trust even that, and it depends on every individual voter. If you say, I'm still uneasy about a week, that's fine. Send it in on Monday or Saturday or Friday and so forth. So you can do that too, but you are guaranteed at a minimum 7 days. Minimum. It can't go below 7. And that's going to change a lot of things. That'll have some downstream effects, but that gives people more time. You can wait until the very end. And let me just add this. It wasn't part of your question, but just in terms of peace of mind, we have a ballot tracker function on our website. So if you go to mnvotes.org, there's a ballot tracking function where you can track the ballot just like you can an Amazon package. You don't have to stick that thing in a mailbox and say a prayer, or stick that thing in a mailbox and wonder whether it ever got there. Gee, well, I hope they get it. That's not the deal at all. You can know with certainty not only that it got there, but the day it got there. It'll tell you your ballot arrived, it was processed on whatever, pick a day. And I did that for the primary, and it worked out really well. It was great peace of mind.
Because if anyone's like me, when I order something on Amazon, I order way too many things on Amazon. But when I do, I'm tracking that thing. And so look at your ballot just like you would look at that purse or whatever you bought. That's so important, okay? Exactly. Track that thing. I didn't know that was an option either. So, Wow, thank you for that. Okay. So for students or for folks that, are in the service, what's the process for them, when it comes to, casting their ballot?
So there are special procedures that Minnesota has for folks who are overseas: military, students, business people, missionaries, diplomats, you name it, whoever is living overseas, but they're Minnesota residents. And it's a special procedure where you can get your ballot delivered to you electronically. You can't deliver a completed ballot back. That's a security risk. But just the blank ballot can be delivered to you securely by electronic means. And this is special, it's got an acronym, it's called UOCAVA. But anyway, if you go to our website, mnvotes.org, you'll find that information. So if you're overseas and you still need to vote, don't worry. That cuts down on a lot of time. Talk about postal deadlines, right? If you can lop off half the time because it's instantaneous, you don't have to factor in 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever it takes these days to get something overseas. So if you're in the military in Kuwait, if you're studying in London, if you're a business person in Shanghai, whatever, you don't have to worry about that. You can get it electronically to you. Go to mnvotes.org to find out more about how you get signed up for that.
Awesome. Okay. All right, Secretary. So here we are. It's election day, and we're like, you know what? I didn't do absentee like I planned. I seen everything about absentee ballots, and I didn't do it. What should it look like for an individual that wants to just go ahead? What's the process? Walk us through what that would look like. How would they find their polling location? And then when they get to the polling place, what does that look like? What are the safety precautions being had? That's very loaded, so we can break that down.
That's cool. No. So if you don't know where to go to that website again, mnvotes.org, super easy. Type in your address, it'll tell you, here's your polling place. This church, this community center, city hall, whatever it is, it'll tell you where to go physically. Once you go physically, if you're not registered, either because you never have been or you needed to change it because you moved or you had a name change or whatever it is, you can just register right there on the spot. We have what's called same day or election day registration, which is awesome. It's like the jewel in the crown of our election laws. And we're one of only 16 states to have it, which is super fortunate. And so you go in, you register right there, and then you vote right there. And it should be a no hassle experience, really. Just go to the place during the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. If you're in line at 8 p.m., you can still vote, even if there's a line. If you're in line by 8 p.m., that's it. Don't leave, stay, and you can still vote. And it's a pretty seamless, pretty smooth procedure.
So, question for you. I was talking to my mom, I actually think this morning, and she asked me if her early polling location was the same as her same day polling location. Does that change for some people?
It changes for most people. So typically in a given city in the metro area, let's say, typically City Hall is the one and only place, unless you're in a really big city like Minneapolis, but like I live in Hopkins. So there's only one place in Hopkins to vote in-person absentee. So if I wanted to tomorrow vote in-person absentee, I would go to Hopkins City Hall. But that's not my polling place on election day. My polling place on election day is a church about 5 blocks from where I'm sitting right now. And so I'd say for most people, it probably changes. So make sure that you don't unnecessarily assume that they're the same. Go to mnvotes.org and you can find out, snap of a finger, and you can find out where to go in either case.
Perfect. So I wanted to make sure that we hit on that because I've done that before, and I know probably other Minnesotans have done that before, and then you're frustrated and it's like, oh, now I have to go. So anyway, save yourself the hassle, as Secretary Simon stated, and go ahead and and check on what your other polling place is. If you have never voted early before, make sure you double check that. So when registering to vote, what materials do you need? I feel like there's so many, people are saying so many different things. Oh, you need this. Oh, you don't need that.
Right.
What do you actually need to register?
All right. So let me break it down here. There's actually less here than meets the eye. Here's the cool thing about registering to vote. It's really just forget all the particular documents just for a second. There's 2 things you got to show to register to vote. 2 things. You are who you say you are, and you live where you say you live. That's it. That's the whole deal. Now, what you can use for those things, there's a long list. And again, I'm repeating myself, but if you go to mnvotes.org, it'll tell you, and it is a long and generous and forgiving list of things. You don't need a driver's license. You don't need a state ID. There's a long list. It can be a utility bill. It can be other forms of documentation. And the reason for that, and it should be that way, forgiving and a long list, is let's not get hung up on and unnecessarily technical here. Those 2 things, if you can reasonably show you are who you say you are and you live where you say you live, that's it. That's all we're looking for. So why not make it easy and have a long list of stuff that can qualify for either or both of those? And we do.
Awesome. Can you give us just a few examples for folks that are still like, okay, what is that though?
An obvious one is a driver's license or a state ID. One could be an expired driver's license. For the "you are who you say you are" part, it can be a Utah, Texas, New York driver's license. Obviously, that's not going to qualify for the "live where you say you live." But in terms of you are who you say you are, yeah, it can be an expired, out of state, driver's license, ID, whatever. It can be a utility bill showing that you live where you say you live part. It can be certain kinds of financial records. Those are just some examples of things. Mortgage statements, if you have one, stuff like that. I do want to point out one other thing. We have something in Minnesota. We're one of the few states that has it, called vouching. Vouching is a system where if you don't have that stuff, you can have someone who lives in your precinct. It's got to be someone in your precinct who's a registered voter in Minnesota, vouch for you. They are declaring under penalty of perjury that you live where you say you live, for example. So this is personal and close to me. My parents in 1998, 22 years ago, they downsized from the house that my sister and I grew up in, and they moved into a condo, and they moved in late October. So they didn't have a current driver's license there. They didn't even have a utility bill yet. There was no billing cycle. So my dad could not have voted in the 1998 gubernatorial election had he not sought out a neighbor who he knew and said, "Hey, could you vouch for me?" It works. It's time tested.
Wow.
And that's a great feature that we have in Minnesota.
Definitely. Wow. Talk about community.
Yeah.
And you know what? And we're talking about that more and more, considering everything that's going on with COVID-19 and being able to be supportive to your neighbors. So yeah, that's an awesome feature to have. Definitely. We have a question that's in the chat box. And the question is, if I wanted to vote in person, but I am immunocompromised, will the polls have socially distant guidelines? Also, do the polls all have individual hours?
So let me answer the last part first. No, the universal voting hours in Minnesota are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., 13 hours, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's it. In terms of someone who's immunocompromised, there are a couple of options if you want to vote in person. Yes, if you go to the polling place, we have developed guidelines with the Minnesota Department of Health that mandate 6-foot social distancing. We will have high-grade, surgical-grade masks, almost surgical grade, for all the election workers. We will have masks available for all the voters who show up without one. We will have hand sanitizer and pumps and wipes. And we've worked with the Department of Health on protocols, as I said, not just social distancing, but use of pens, automatic wipe down of the polling surfaces after use by voters, and that sort of thing. But there's another option, and it's one that needs to get wider circulation. Minnesota has what's called curbside voting. It's what it sounds like. You can vote from your vehicle. So if you drive up or someone drives you up, you can have election judges come out to you and give you your ballot in your vehicle. It's best to do that, give them a heads up in advance, because it takes some folks to do that. There needs to be a party division, so one Democratic judge and one Republican election judge come out just to make sure they're watching each other. But curbside voting is a real possibility for folks who want the in-person experience, but they don't want to have to go actually inside of a building.
And that could be also even if they're not driving, correct? If they're, let's say they're okay.
Oh yeah, driver or passenger, it doesn't matter.
Awesome. Well, there you are. Thanks for that question, Genevieve. All right. So let's go ahead. So I was actually getting ready to ask you about curbside voting next. So that's interesting that she just asked that. That's great. All right. So I already asked you that question about polling locations. We already have all that good stuff. Okay. This is something that I'm very curious about. Where does your passion for this work come from? I'm very curious.
I got to tell you. So I say I'm in the democracy business for a reason, because that's what it feels like. The stakes right now feel particularly high. And to me, the short answer is election issues and democracy issues are everybody issues, no matter what other issue you think you care about the most, whether that's racial justice, whether that is environmental protection, whether that's good jobs, whether that's good schools, whatever it is, all of that flows from elections and democracy. Look, people get elected to all sorts of stuff. President of the United States, school board, governor, whatever. And what they do or fail to do once they get into office has real downstream effects on all of us. Now, there are a lot of ways to make change. ABM knows that, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers know that. There are many ways to make change. But any fair observer has to say that a really, really big one is electoral politics, getting people into office who share your views or values. It's not the only way. It isn't, but it's a big, big, important way. People in Minnesota understand that. And then, part of it, since you asked, is personal with me. My great-grandparents fled from Eastern Europe. They didn't just immigrate, they fled. Their lives, their well-being, the well-being of their family was in danger, and they fled. And they didn't have the right to vote where they were. They didn't have a democratic government where they were, and they fell to a place that had those things. And that is the basis for the life of my family in this country. And I know how much they prized and valued the ability to have a say in who governed them and how. And they got that here, and we can't take that for granted.
Absolutely. I share that same. My family didn't flee another country, but my great grandmother, Narvetta Crockett, her soul, she was, and my other grandmother, Charzetta Hunter, they were very avid when it came to making sure that our voices were heard. And my grandmother, Sarah, as well, she was in everything from picketing to, just making sure that, that our community reflected our values. And that's from, protesting or whatever, or, and like you were talking about, voting and making sure that those in office that govern over us truly do reflect what we value. That's so important. We don't have that many. Those are the very particular things that we have control over as Americans, right? And that is going to casting our ballot. There are so many people that fought for us, that, women and people of color, Black folks, people of color that fought for everyone to be able to have, this right to be able to vote, and so I believe it's, definitely my civic duty, as I'm sure so many other Minnesotans that are on this live right now, they feel that civic duty, to definitely speak on behalf, of your family, your friends. And I'm not going to preach to y'all, but anyways, I feel you. I feel you, Secretary.
Amen. Amen.
I feel you on that. So thank you for sharing that piece of you. Being open and sharing that with us. I'm sure Minnesotans definitely appreciated that. All right. For folks that are interested in voting in person, and or being a poll worker, but are nervous about COVID, what are some of the safety measures that are being taken at the polls?
Yeah, and I totally understand that. We need folks to step up. We need 30,000 people every general election, 30,000. That's a small army to do that job. And bless the people who do that year in and year out, anytime. And I understand there are some folks who are on the bubble about doing that. Typically in Minnesota, they tend to skew older. They tend to disproportionately be seniors or retirees. And I know I know some in person who are really on the bubble about doing that. And my advice to them is you got to go with your own gut and your own comfort level. All I can say is we're doing everything we can to make the polling place safe. As I mentioned, we're going to be having high grade, almost surgical grade masks for all election workers, and more than one. You don't have to make one last your whole shift. More than one per election judge. We're going to have the hand sanitizers and the pumps and the wipes, just like we did last month in the primary. It was a good dress rehearsal. And keep in mind, since so many Minnesotans have spoken up and said that they want to vote from home, there are going to be fewer people in the polling places. You're not going to be exposed to as many people cycling in there. We have typically an average of about 1,000 people per polling place. An average, it's a very rough statewide average, but it's going to be a lot lower. We're looking at anywhere from a third to maybe up to 40% who are going to be voting from home. That means that's going to cut drastically in the number of people circulating throughout there. So we feel very good that we're going to make it a safe atmosphere, but it's really up to every individual person and their own tolerance for risk, I'd say.
Awesome. And, also for folks that are interested, even some of our younger folks too, middle-aged, older Minnesotans, if you are looking to be a poll worker, you can also, you will also be compensated, to my understanding as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I want to get that message out. This is a job. It's not a volunteer gig. This is a paid gig. And you even get paid for the 2 hours of online training. You get paid for that too. And one other thing, you can do it as young as 16 years old. And if you're 18 and above, there are no geographic restrictions. So you're not tied to your city or your county. If you live in Minneapolis and you hear they need folks in Eagan or Apple Valley or Duluth for that matter, if you're willing to travel, they'll take you. And so you're not like tied to any particular jurisdiction or location. And that's a good thing too.
Awesome. So calling one, calling all, you will be compensated and you will be doing a great service for your state. So please, if you are interested, they can also go to the website for that as well.
mnvotes.org. You can fill out an interest form or call a city. Just call, I say a city, it doesn't have to be your city. Call a city and express that interest that way.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Please explain who's actually eligible to vote.
Yes, pretty simple in Minnesota. You got to be 18 years old. You got to be a Minnesota resident. You've got to be a citizen of the United States, and you cannot currently be serving a felony sentence. That's the big four. That's it. If you meet all those tests, you're in.
And I know Senator Champion talks about this a lot too. He actually had a bill around it. Talks about, if you are not if you're not on paper, right? Can you talk a little bit more about what that actually means?
Absolutely. So I supported him. I have supported him and strongly support him and will continue to on his measure, his bill. It's about time. It's way past time that we do what he wants to do and what I want to do, which is say that if you've left prison behind, you get your right to vote back right away. And the law we have right now doesn't do that. The law we have right now says you only get your right to vote back if you're done with the prison part and you're done with the what's called on paper part. The problem with that is sometimes the on paper part is years and years and years and years, particularly in Minnesota. In Minnesota, we have tended to weight our sentences for criminal offenses more on the paper part than in the prison part, which means you could, I'm just giving a hypothetical, you could be in prison for a couple of years and on paper for 10 or 15 or 20 or sometimes longer. It doesn't make any sense to deny someone who's paid that part of their debt to society, who's left prison behind, to deny them the right to vote. We have too many folks in Minnesota who are in that boat. We got to end it. Other states like Iowa, like North Dakota, like Florida have gone in that direction, and we need to also.
This is a very nonpartisan issue. I mean, this is, this affects everyone across the state, not just, inner city, everyone across the state. So
no, and Senator Champion's bill has broad bipartisan support. You've got liberal Democrats on board, you've got conservative Republicans on board, so it's got a lot of bipartisan support and growing.
Absolutely. All right. Hopefully that's helpful to some of you all that had questions, some that have that have backgrounds and you're wondering if you're eligible, if you're not eligible. Hopefully that cleared up some things. If it hasn't, please feel free to drop more questions in the chat box and we'll be sure to address those. Okay. So how do I check my eligibility? So do I go to mnvotes.org? Will that help me figure out is there like a list of people that are not eligible? How do I know if I'm questioning it?
There's no bad list like that. No. I would go to mnvotes.org and it goes into a little bit more detail about some of those things. I mean, obviously a person would know their age. Are you 18 or over? Are you a resident? If you're unsure about whether you qualify yet for residency, and sometimes that gets a little tricky, but it's really easy. I mean, you have to live 20 days basically in a particular place. That's really the bottom line rule. And then felony sentence, and then are you a citizen of the United States? But if you're worried about the particulars there, if there's a particular kind of issue in your case, go to mnvotes.org and that'll do the trick.
Awesome. Okay, so if I'm filling out my ballot, let's say it's absentee or even on the day of on election day, and I make a mistake on my ballot, what do I do? Oh my goodness, throw me away. What happens?
No, if you do it at the polling place, easy. And it's not uncommon. People will say, oh man, well, I totally blew it here. They'll give you another ballot. They'll rip it up, they'll destroy it, they'll give you another one. Let me hijack your question slightly. Sometimes I get this one. What if I send in my mail ballot and I decide, God, I made a terrible mistake. I voted for candidate A. I should have voted for candidate B. What do I do? Well, up to 14 days before the election, you can claw that ballot back. You can ask them to get it out of the pile, and you can either rip it up right there, or they'll rip it up or destroy it and give you a new one there, or you wait till election day, whatever. If you have your change of heart on day minus 12 or 8 or 6, then you're out of luck. You are locked in as of day minus 14. But up to day minus 14, you can change your mind and get a new ballot.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, you all. There's no excuse, okay?
Right.
Have it. Awesome. All right. Can I drop my ballot? Yes, we already asked that question. The question of, can I drop off my absentee ballot that I requested to my home? So asking if they could drop off their ballot, their absentee ballot that they received at home, can they drop it off in person?
Absolutely.
Yes, to that. Awesome. Great, great, great. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one here. What do people do about language accessibility? Or is there a translator on site? How does that work?
Well, one of the things I'm really proud of, because on my mother's side, my mother was an immigrant. I talked about my great-grandparents on my father's side, but I'm a first-generation American on the other side. My mother was an immigrant. So I fully appreciate and understand, because I lived it and breathed it and grew up in it, the importance of having things accessible to folks whose native language is not English. And so one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire time as Secretary of State is we have more than doubled the number of non-English languages that we serve. It used to be 5, now it's 12, including American Sign Language, we just added as the 12th. But other than ASL, we have 11, and it reflects the beauty and diversity of our state. And it's based on census numbers. We're not playing favorites with anyone. We just looked at the actual largest language communities, and we're serving them. So all the instructions and online instructions as well are available in all those languages. But at the polling place, now that gets a little bit trickier. There are some places like Minneapolis where there's an extensive effort to get translators and interpreters in the polling place, particularly certain polling places. It's tougher if you're voting in-person absentee, obviously. But what you should do is, if you or a loved one or someone you know you think is going to need that, I would call in advance to your particular city. Probably city is best. And ask about the possibility. Ask what they have to offer. Ask if there's anything, even if it's sort of by appointment. If you say, hey, if I bring so-and-so in on Wednesday or on Tuesday morning, rather at 10, is it possible you could have a translator there? The other important thing too, particularly for family members, is that we have a newly clarified law. There was a big lawsuit over this, but it's clarified in the right direction. You can help someone in the polling place. You can help someone in the polling place cast their ballot. You can't tell them how to vote, but if there's someone whose native language is not English and they need someone to accompany them to the polling place just to help them with translation, you can do that. You can do that in an unlimited way. There used to be a limitation on it, not a limitation anymore. So you can accompany grandma, grandpa, sibling, parent, aunt, uncle, whatever, into the polling place. You can do that.
Awesome. Would that be the same deal even if they had difficulty, maybe walking in? Like, could we?
Yeah, that same rule of assisting someone in the polling place, literally going with them to the voting station. You can't whisper in their ear who to vote for.
Yeah.
But they say, well, what does this mean? What does county commissioner mean? What does this mean? What is this next office? You can help them with translation, or if someone has a physical disability, and I've done that myself. I've assisted someone with Parkinson's disease in the polling place who just had some mobility and physical issues and needed someone to lean on and needed someone to help with the pen and things like that. So I've done that. So anyone with a physical disability or someone whose native language isn't English, you can assist. You can go right up there with them into the poll.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for all. I think that is the end of my questions. Okay. I want to open it up more to folks that are in the Facebook Live. If you have more questions that you have for Secretary Simon, now is the time to drop those. All right. Also, as you see here, right here, you can make sure you visit mnvotes.org for all of these things that we discussed this evening. Answers to all these questions, I believe, are on there. There are some that I threw in there as well. So this is a treat for you all. So feel free to share this.
Can I say something while we're waiting, if we're waiting for other questions to trickle in? Can I just put out a pitch here for something?
For sure.
I need help. I need friends. I need allies for something. I got a favor to ask everyone watching this broadcast. And it's a serious one. I worry about our country and I worry about our state in the period immediately after Election Day. I said earlier in the hour that in Minnesota, by definition, because we have an extra week to get our ballots in, you have to postmark it by November 3rd, of course. But if it gets there a week later, then you're good to go. that means by definition, we're not going to have 100% of the votes in until a week from Election Day. And I want to talk about that for a little bit. Number one, just understand, and I hope you can help me spread the message, that when people see that on election night there is not 100% of the vote in, just let folks know that that is by design.
Yeah.
Absolutely by design. That's not someone screwing up or not doing their job or not planning correctly. No, the opposite is true. It was designed that way by the legislature this year and by the courts this year in a number of court rulings. So I just want folks to know that. I also want folks to know that just because we won't have 100% of the votes in for a week doesn't mean we're going to be standing around wondering who won all the offices. We're going to know. We're going to know who won most of the offices, by far most, either on election night or really shortly thereafter. Here's my personal favor to ask. I do worry in this country and in the state that period after election day, for some days or even weeks, that will be fertile ground for disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theories, accusations, allegations which are just not true. I can't speak for any other state, but in Minnesota, that lag, that delay is by design, and nobody is rigging anything, stealing anything of that kind. And we just all got to do what we've all been doing for the last few months during this pandemic, which is be patient, try to be calm about it. I know temperatures run hot when it comes to a presidential election. They should. It's intense. The stakes are high, no question. They're hot for a reason. Yeah. It's a big impact. But this is a real test for us. I hate to get too dramatic here, but it really is for this country and for this state. And things are going to take a little bit longer. So I need help in getting that message out when that time comes. This is not a time to lose our heads. This is not a time to allege all sorts of stuff or to let social media pit us against each other. We just got to take this as it comes. So I need friends, allies, and community leaders and thought leaders, which all of you are if you're tuned into this broadcast, to spread that message. And we just can't afford that kind of chaos and doubt and during that period. It could be rough. I'm actually optimistic more than I am pessimistic, but we got to work at it. And I think we can get through it. We will get through it.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Definitely. So here's another question. It's pretty much kind of touching on what you just spoke about in regards to how long will it actually take for the ballots to be counted? Do you have an approximate? I think a lot of folks are really concerned about, of course, the presidential. So we're hearing a lot of things like, okay, it could take up to, a week. It could take up to 2 weeks. It could take up to a month. Like what do we think? I know you don't know exactly, but what are you thinking?
Well, here's what I think. In Minnesota, we have the ballots will come in for a week after Election Day. So on the evening of Tuesday, November 10th, all the ballots should be counted in Minnesota, okay? So, but to the more specific question, just because 100% of the ballots won't be known for a week doesn't mean, as I said, that we're all going to be wondering who won stuff. I think the opposite is true. I think the vast majority of contests, we're going to know who won, either that night, election night, or shortly thereafter. And the reason for that is we're going to be able to give really good information and updates on the number of outstanding absentee ballots. And we're going to do it down to the House level, down to the state House level. So let me give you an example. Candidate A is ahead of candidate B on election night by 1,000 votes. But let's say we can tell you on election night or shortly thereafter that there are 700 outstanding absentee ballots, meaning there's 700 that we sent out that haven't come in yet. We don't know. Are they coming in on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, up to the next Tuesday? We don't know any of that. We don't know when, what rate, what speed, whatever. We just know that there's 700 that haven't come back yet. But we know that candidate A leads by 1,000 votes. Well, you can call that race right away. You know that candidate A has won. She's ahead by 1,000 votes. Mm-hmm. And even if all the votes that are left outstanding go to her opponent, you can't make up that ground. Yeah. Now, we don't know, and we won't know for a week how much she's won by. Was it a little? Was it a lot? We don't know. But we'll know that she won. And I think most results are going to be like that. So I can't put an exact date on it, but I think sooner rather than later, in most cases, we're going to know who won. Will there be a few contests that come down to that seventh day of totals that trickle in? Yeah, probably. Just the law, you roll the dice, the law of averages tells you, yeah, there's going to be some number. I don't know what the number is. But I strongly suspect that in most cases it will not be that. We're going to know earlier rather than later. If not on election night, then very soon. That's the best I can do. Look at the bright side. We have a week to count the ballots in Michigan, a big state and a swing state. 2 weeks. So they're not going to have their ballots counted until Tuesday, November 17th.
Oh, goodness.
So count our blessings, right?
Yeah. Wowzers. All right. So hopefully that's helpful for everyone. I know that's not a definite answer, but there's a lot of things that are kind of, up in the air a little bit here for this particular election. So we have another question here. All right. How long will it take for all? That's the same one. Just kidding. So I do have another question for you here. What are all the offices that are going to be on the ballot?
Yeah. So obviously it varies a little bit based on where you live. And for that, and I know I keep saying this, if you go to mnvotes.org, we have a great feature there called My Ballot. And it's what it sounds like. You type in your address, and it'll tell you what and who is on your ballot. So if you're going, I don't know, am I even voting on county commissioner this year? Is there a school board race in my area? Do we have a state senator up this year? You don't have to guess about all that. You can go to the ballot, and up pops not only the names in the contest, but links to their websites, if they have a website. So you can read about them or explore them in their own words. So that's a really great feature. So it depends on where you live. The one thing that we all have in common is the presidential race, obviously. We've got the U.S. Senate contest. Everyone will have a race for United States House. Everyone will have a race for State House and State Senate. And there are some statewide, there's a Supreme Court election going on. There are some Court of Appeals elections going on. Those are the things that bind all of us that we have no matter what. And then the rest are localized. You may or may not have county commissioner or school board or mayor. That just depends on where you live.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right, you all. If there are any more questions, please make sure that you drop those below. In the meantime, I also did want to share with our viewers that we also have a similar tool that you can also use to learn more about folks that are on your ballot. You can visit mnvoterguide.org, mnvoterguide.org. And on there, it also has folks that are on your ballot as well. And then also how to make a plan to make sure you go vote. mnvoterguide.org. Okay, you can make a plan, where to go vote, all that good stuff. Basically, everything connects back to the Secretary of State's office. So everything's connecting back there. So yeah, make sure you do your research. Why is it so important for us to make sure that we do our research on the candidates?
Well, look, I mean, ideally, everyone will want to know what they're getting into, right? Especially, I have to say, for things like nonpartisan offices, partisan designation is a pretty good proxy these days for what you believe in and certain values. I mean, not perfect, but people, when they know someone has a D or an R or something behind their name, there's certain assumptions they make. But what about offices in particular, like most of everything else? City council, school board, county commissioner, that don't have a party designation. That's where looking into the individuals is particularly important. You want to make sure that you're not inadvertently voting for someone who doesn't share your views and values. So that's super important.
Correct. Absolutely. So make sure you all do your research. You have so many resources that you can utilize to make sure that you understand who's on your ballot, and if you have questions about what the office actually does, you can also contact us. You can contact the Secretary of State's office, and I'm sure that they will be helpful as well on, exactly what does a commissioner do? What does a state senator do? And that's there's no dumb questions. There are no, especially in this process, you want to make sure that you are very informed and clear about exactly what you are doing and how you're voting. All right. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. All right. Okay, if we have no more questions, I think we'll do some final remarks. So, Secretary, I'll let you take it away. Any final remarks for Minnesotans that are listening? Oh, you know what? I do have one more question for you. I have a brother. He's 19 years old, and he's voting, of course, this year. Well, I feel like he's kind of up in the air. He has some personal thoughts or whatever about, as we all do, about what's going on. What would you say to a newer voter on the importance that is trying to figure out exactly, should I vote? Does it matter? Big deal. What would you say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I'd say to your brother. I'd say, look, I understand why you're up in the air. It may be, I don't know you, but I'm speculating, I'm guessing here, it may be that you just think, look, there are better ways to make change. Politics has either you feel failed you, or failed your community, or failed your country, or just not delivered on its promise. And you think there are better ways to channel your energy to make change, things you want to see happen, but it's not through electoral politics. It's not through electing people to office. And I understand that view. Or maybe your view is, look, sure, politics can be important, but I am disillusioned, if not disgusted, with politics right now, with politicians, with what they talk about, with what they don't talk about, with how they conduct themselves, with the overall system. And you might overall conclude that you don't want to vote because you want to demonstrate your disapproval. That not voting is an intentional act. It's not that you don't know where to go to find info. You can go to mnvotes.org like anyone else. You know where to find out what you need, but you don't want to vote because you think it's important to withhold your vote as a certain act of protest. But even though that's a natural feeling that everyone, including me, feels from time to time, even if it's just for a second, right? I'm asking folks, and I'm asking you not to give into that. And I can't put it any better than the words I once saw on a t-shirt. And the t-shirt said, failure to vote is not an act of rebellion, it's an act of surrender. I love that. I love that because it's so damn true. So you may think that you're striking a blow for some cause. You may think you're registering your disapproval, but what you're really doing is surrendering. And like anything of value, like the right to vote, you leave that thing on the table, you surrender it, someone's going to swipe what you leave of value. And that someone might be someone who doesn't share any of your views and values. You're basically doubling the vote of someone who does vote, who totally disregards or disagrees with every view and value that you have. So I understand the impulse. Believe me, you don't think I do, but I do. But don't give into it.
Absolutely.
Vote and make sure that you express yourself, and make sure people who share your views and values get places.
Awesome. We could just say amen and end this live right now, right off of that. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully that inspires someone out there to make sure that you let your voice be heard this season. It is so, so important. We talk so much about our young people, leading us and being the leaders of tomorrow, but they're the leaders of today. And we need you in every area of society, everywhere. And you're valuable, and the way your viewpoints are valuable. Senator Champion says this all the time: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so if you don't, if you don't let your voice be heard, it's not to say that you can't complain or you can't. Yeah, well, you kind of can't, because you didn't pull up. Rihanna says that too. You didn't pull up. She says, how are you going to pull up to the table? If you stand for something, pull up, make your voice heard. So yeah, hopefully that's inspiring to you, to everyone out there. Thank you so much, Secretary Simon, for your time this evening. We appreciate the great work that you do. And yes, everyone, please do go out and vote. This is such an important time. And I think that is it. Is there any other final words that you have for us?
Go vote. mnvotes.org is the website. Please go there. Please, if you're considering voting from home this year, which I hope that you do, order that ballot now. Don't wait until late October when people are super slammed. Order it now. Make your voice heard, however you do it. We're going to get through this. I'm glass half full. I'm an optimist. We're going to get through this. A, because we have to, and B, because that's who we are. We're going to overcome those obstacles, and we're going to have a good and safe and clean and honest election.
Yes. Oh, and happy Yom Kippur as well.
Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you again, Secretary Simon. All right, everyone. Go out and vote. Take care.